In this module, I'm going to show you how to create your app's database. This is an important part of your app's architecture because it dictates so much of the overall app performance. Because you have complete control over what tables you create in your app and how they're organized, a lot of strategy comes into play here. So for this video, we're going to start with the building blocks of your database, which are the data types, okay, and that's the tab that we're looking at right now. Data types are tables, essentially. Then the fields that you create within each table. So those are these fields that we see here, right? So we're looking at the user data type. The user has these fields here. If I go over to the company data type, company has its own fields. They have their own definitions so that we can tell Bubble what type of value to expect, right? For a company name, that is a text. For a company logo, that is an image. And then the third component are the option sets. This is how you can organize predetermined list of choices. And this is organized in its own tab over here. Okay, so again, data types and their fields are created and managed here, option sets in a separate tab. Now, before I go into these further, I'm actually going to switch over to a traditional spreadsheet with example data so that you can see how this translates into your editor. A lot of folks find this easier to understand to see sample data in this format first, and then I'll show you the equivalent, how everything translates from here into the editor. So this spreadsheet is actually broken up into 4 separate tabs, these 4 separate tables. Okay, so I want you to see each of these as representatives of a data type. Okay, so we'll start with the user data type, or in other words, the user table. So the user table right now has several users, and each user is on a different row. Okay, so the first user we have is Rachel. Rachel has an email address, a first name, a last name, and is categorized, right? User type for Rachel is applicant. We have 3 different types in our overall job board database. So a user can be an applicant, they can be a hiring company, or they can be kind of a system admin, the owner of the application. In other words, you, the builder of the app. Okay, so every single user is a separate entry in the user table. Okay, and every user has specific values that are unique to them for each of these fields. Okay, so look at the fields as the separate columns, and every field is going to have a unique column name, right? Or a field name, email address, first name, last name, type. Okay, so if we take that into the editor here, I'm going to go to the user table. We can see that we have a first name field, which is a text, a last name field, which is a text, right? A profile photo, which is an image. I have a few more fields here than I do in my spreadsheet. And then we also have the type, which is actually linked to one of our option sets. Okay, so I have applicant and company. Let me head over to the option sets tab, go back to the user type option set that I've created here. Those are my 2 choices. I'm going to add a new option for admin, right? So this is just a new choice that I have created in this set so that when I want to define a user and have a type assigned to a user, I will be able to choose from one of those 3 predefined types. This will allow me to stay consistent when I'm assigning types to users. I'm not going to have to type it in every single time and risk typing them in differently, spelled differently, have different case sensitivities and things like that. Okay, now a while back, Bubble used to not have option sets, and we would organize types and categories and things like that, choices that would come from a list like this with a simple plain text. Now, we used to have this designed this way in our demo application here, but we've since replaced that system to take advantage of the option sets. And I encourage you to take advantage of option sets wherever you can. Option sets are a way for you to create a list of choices that you as the app owner have control over. Your users do not have control over what sets exist in the application or what the choices are. Now, you may run into a situation where you do want your users to be in control of some list of choices. Well, in that case, you're simply going to create another data type for that. Okay, and that way your users can create entries under that category so that they're in complete control of the labels over all of that. Okay, so for now, let's just take a couple steps back, right? So the user data type has several fields here. They've been defined with these value types, text, image, right? Or they're linked to a specific option set. And that equates to this structure here, the fact that we have a table with a certain number of fields with a label And we are telling Bubble what kind of value to expect for each of those fields. Let's take a look at our next data type here. So here we've got the company data type. So I've got two example entries in this table. One for City University, that's the name of the company, right? Name of my company record here. Then Italian Restaurant is the name of my second company. And these entries also have other unique values for the properties defined for the company data type. So City University is going to have a specific logo, while Italian Restaurant has their own logo, they have their own location. And we also have a couple of relationship fields to other records. Okay, so let's go back into the editor and take a look at our company data type, right? So we have the name, which is a text, the name of the company, the logo, which is an image, okay, website, which is also a text. And here is our first relationship field, list of jobs. Okay, so again, this is a job board application. So a hiring company is going to create job listings or job posts. So it'll describe the job. We're actually organizing that in a separate table here. So the company will be able to create a new job entry whenever they have a job open for hiring. They'll define the title of the job, the start date. You know, they may have other things in here too, like the salary, the description, the responsibilities, things like that. So in order to associate a job post with a company, right? So we know which company belongs to that job post. We can create fields that relate to each other. Okay, so from the company's perspective, we can have a field here that lists out all of the job records from the job post table that belong to the company. Okay, so this is a field that is simply a reference to other records in the overall app database. Okay, when we say this is pointing to a list of job posts, it's not just pointing to the title of the post or the salary of the job post or the description. It's actually pointing to the entire record. And in this particular case, it's a list of them. There are multiple job posts that can be associated with the company. If we look at the other side of the relationship, okay, so the job post table, from that perspective, every job post is only going to be associated with one company, right? We can't have one job post tied to multiple companies. Every company is doing their own hiring. So from the company's perspective, we have a one-to-many relationship. From the job post perspective, it's a one-to-one relationship. So this is still a relationship field where a post is referencing another company record. Again, not just the company name, not just their logo or their website. It's the whole record in the company table. And it basically acts as a shortcut so that you can get to the associated company through the job post. Okay, and so that in our spreadsheet format here, I'm indicating those relationships with these brackets just to show you that when I'm looking at a list of jobs within a company, I'm not just looking at the name of the job. I'm actually looking at the entire record, and it's represented by the name in the way that I've noted it here. Okay, it's represented by the name. Same thing with a relationship field to a specific user in the user table, right? A company is going to have a hiring manager, right? And so we'll create a relationship field to link a company to a specific user. And here I've represented that user by their name, but it is actually referencing the entire user record. So we will have access to the user's name, their email, their profile photo, their phone number. Okay, and so if we go back to the company record here, we also have that same that field that's the equivalent right here, right? We've got a manager field, that's the label of it, but notice that the type of value for this field is a user. So how do we define all of these things? Okay, so let's start looking at how we create these types and fields in our database. So creating a new type is just as simple as typing in a new name for your table right here in this field. Okay, so let's say I want to create a new type for work experience, like this. Okay, so now I have a brand new data type. I've introduced a new table to my overall database. You'll notice that Bubble gives you a handful of built-in fields right out of the gate. Okay, I don't have to worry about creating fields to know when this record was first created in the system, when was the last modification date, who created this record. Bubble will keep track of that for me. These are values that I won't even be able to change, so that's really great for logging and troubleshooting. Okay, we also have a field for the slug, which will help you create unique URLs if it is appropriate for that particular data type. There might be some data types where you don't really need to worry about the slug. But for example, with job posts, if these are going to be public pages, you have a detail page to look at all the information about a job post that is available to the public. They don't even have to log in. or even if they do have to log in, they're searching for job posts, and you take them to a detail page, the unique URL for that particular post can be identified by its slug. This is an SEO friendly type of value that you can take advantage of. Okay, so let's go back to our new data type here, work experience. So right out of the gate, we have these built-in fields. Now, if I want to introduce custom fields to this data type, I can click on create a new field, and I can begin by giving my new field a name. So if we're creating a properties for a work experience record, I might want to say, the start date of the work experience. And so here I can tell Bubble what type of value to expect for this field. Well, a start date is just going to be a plain date. Notice that we have a lot of different field types that we can choose from: text, number, date ranges, yes or no. This is just kind of a Boolean, right? It's either true or false. Usually if you're working with fields where you would have like a checkbox selection, that type of thing makes sense for yes or no. If we have file uploads, images, okay, we'll talk about these other ones down here that are actually our custom definitions, but we've got some generic values here. So a start date would be a date right there. Okay, we also have an end date. If we're talking about work experience, we want to know when that work ended. Okay, if there is no end date, we can assume that that's the present work experience. Okay, you have a lot of flexibility over whether records even have values in certain fields or not. Not every single field has to have something saved to it. Let's do maybe the company name that the applicant's work experience was with, right? The company that they worked for. So this would just be a text. This is different from hiring companies that are also users of the application that are hiring for jobs. This is just a way for the applicant to say, hey, I worked at this place for 5 years. I worked at another place for 6 months, and this is who it was with. We could also have the supervisor name like this, which is a text. We could have the supervisor contact number, right? Whether it's a phone number or an email address, we'll kind of leave it open-ended for them. So I can start to build out all of the properties that the applicant should be able to fill in per work experience. Now, of course, we also need to know which applicant is this associated with, which user is tied to this work experience, because so far we don't really have that indicated here. Now, yes, you could rely on the built-in creator field. That is one way to go, but just be mindful that this is not a value that you can change. Once the user who is logged in has created a record, that is the user associated to this creator field. So there might be some cases where users create records for other users, right? On their behalf, they create records. So you may want to still have a separate relationship to a different user, and you can do that with a custom field. So I can say, related applicant with my custom labeling here, and the field type in this case is not a text, right? It's not the name of the person. It's actually a user that I know exists in my database. It is a user with a type of applicant. So I would create that here. This is our relationship field. We're tying a work experience to a user record so that they belong together. Now, under the user record, I could have the relationship on the other side. I could have a field here called list of work experiences, like this, right? And so this would be tied to my work experience data type, right? So we know that it's related to that a record of that type, within that table. And I could say that we can allow multiple values here, multiple records to be added to this field, right? This is a list of work experiences. So an applicant can have multiple jobs that they want to, make available on their application. Right, we also see that user has a list of saved jobs. So if they're doing a search for jobs in kind of a marketplace type of design, they can favorite certain jobs that they want to apply to later. And those jobs can simply be added to the user's list of jobs, right? They're not creating jobs. They're just taking a reference to an existing job and adding it to an isolated list here. If they were to remove the job from the list, nothing happens to the job post. It doesn't get deleted or modified in any way. It's simply removing it from the user's segmented list from here. Okay, so that is what we're looking at when we're creating data types and the fields within them. You need to tell Bubble exactly what to expect in terms of the values, because the definition of the value does dictate how you can work with the field later on in your workflows, in all of your logic, in your front-end designs even. Right? If we're working with dates, we can put things on a calendar. We can do date math with them. If we're working with numbers, we can do math with those as well. If we're working with relationship fields, we can access values within that record. I can access the applicant's email, the applicant's name, or their photo. So all of this really matters how you structure this. Also, the way that you relate things, if you're going to have a one-way relationship versus a two-way relationship. In some cases, you don't need the two-way relationship, right? I have the work experience tied to the applicant. I technically don't need to have this list field under the user as well. It's a little bit redundant, but this is where some strategy comes into play. Having this relationship on the other side gives me more flexibility. It gives me another way to find the list of work experiences tied to this user. I could search this work experience table directly and filter on a specific user to find those records, right? The records that are tied to a given user. Or I could just go to the user directly and I have that list already present. So it reduces the amount of searching that I'm asking Bubble to do. But be careful here. Be careful with list fields that get too big. You want to make sure that list fields are pretty contained. We actually like to have a rule of thumb that we don't like list fields to go over 100 items. Bubble technically allows you to save, I believe it's up to 10,000 items in a list, right? They can have 10,000 values within one list field. But we don't like to get anywhere near that because we've seen that the performance really starts to get affected. List fields should be seen more as a convenience versus a requirement. Okay, as long as you have the one-to-one relationship on the other side, okay, work experience to applicant, that's actually all you really need to get everything to display properly, to search and filter things in your designs. So these should really be seen more as a convenience. Keep list fields to things where you know that they'll be relatively contained. They'll have, under 100 items, even at scale. All right, now a couple of other things to note within this window here when you're working with your data types. First, you'll notice that when you create an application for the very first time, the only data type you will see is the user type. Every single Bubble application comes with that. It's built in, you can't remove it. It's a special type of table because Bubble handles all of the credentialing for you. The email address is built in here, as you can see, and the password is also technically a part of it. You won't be able to see it because it's encrypted. It's a security thing. You won't be able to access your users' passwords, but that is built in there. Any other table you need to create for your application, you are creating custom, right? So you're creating new data types for that. You can delete your own custom data types by clicking on these trash can icons. So let's say I want to delete my work experience type. By clicking on that there, it's gone. Now, technically, it is still a part of the application. I can reveal it by going to Show Deleted Types. You can see all of these different deleted data types that we have here, and I can restore it in case I make a mistake there and I want to bring it back to life here. Okay, it can come back. We can do the same thing with our fields as well. We might have some, yeah, there we go, some deleted fields attached to the user, so I could restore these. Looks like we've had several attempts at certain fields. Now, if you make a mistake when you create a field, let's say you chose the wrong type, or you made it a list when you didn't mean to make it a list, or if you just need to replace a field, you won't be able to change the field definition. You can always rename your fields, but if you need to change the field definition, you'll have to just create a new field. So delete the old one and create a new one. All right. You'll notice that there are also note-taking capabilities here. Anytime you see these icons, you'll actually find that all throughout your editor, not just in your data management. But this is a handy way to just keep internal notes to yourself if you want to, communicate with another developer, somebody that you're working with, or just keep a note to yourself on what this field is being used for. Okay. You'll also see these default fields here for you. Now, whenever records are created through your workflows, if you have provided a default value, then the record will be created with that value already saved to the record automatically. And you don't have to define that default value in the workflow. It's just going to happen for you. This is kind of like a system-wide way of ensuring that every single record starts out with some default value. Of course, you can override it. You can change it to something else through your workflows. But this is very handy. So let's say that every single job post, no matter what, as soon as it's created, if the user doesn't indicate a title, it's always going to start with, untitled post, so that you never have a post with an empty title. Now, of course, you can control, you can prevent job posts from being created with an empty title through your workflows. You can create conditions around it so that posts aren't actually generated until they fill out that, that input field where you have a requirement set. So there's lots of different ways that you can approach this, but that is what these default values are here for. If you're creating a new record and it hasn't otherwise been specified, you can provide a default value for that. It's optional. You don't have to put that in there if you don't want. So if a job post, is created for the first time, we can have it defaulting to draft like this. Again, you can ignore these fields here. We're going to put some X's in front of outdated fields we're no longer using. We've actually been replacing those with option sets because they're much more appropriate, they're more scalable, they're more consistent and reliable to go off of an option set. Okay, so we talked about that a little bit here with the user type. We've created a set for admin, applicant, company. We have another option set for job post status. Okay, so if we go into our option set table, here's another set that we've created with these choices. And so now every job post can be associated with one of those choices, one of those statuses. And if we set a default here, then every job post that's created will start out as a draft. All right. So those are all of the different things that you can work with when creating your types and fields. Now, the next one that we want to look at in a little bit more depth here is your option set. So again, your users don't have controls over these sets. You are the one that's defining these. So this is another area where you only want to create sets where the choices are a bit more contained. Okay, so with the job post statuses, we have 4 statuses. With the user type, we have 3 statuses. Categories may grow to, maybe a couple dozen. That's perfectly fine. But when you start to hit, 30, 50, 100 items in your set, things get kind of cumbersome to work with in this, just within the option set area here. And we actually recommend managing those much larger sets of choices as a data type, right? Where the choices are now just going to be other entries in your database. They're going to be their own row items. Okay, that's very normal. In fact, that's actually what we used to do before Bubble introduced option sets into the Bubble engine, into the system here. Okay, so option sets should be more contained. You do want to take advantage of them as much as possible because they do come with performance benefits. They are not a part of your database. So when you're going to display all of your choices, Bubble's not having to query your database, which can be a little bit more, server intensive, just depending on many variables, one of them being the size of that table, right? The number of records that might be there. Option sets are not a part of your database. So if you can take advantage of creating an option set here, definitely do that. So we have a few different sets here: application status, different statuses that the applicant themselves can change their application to, or the recruiter can change the application to, categories for the jobs, right? Is this a fitness related job, or is this in the education industry? And we've already gone over post statuses and user types. So you create them the same way as you create data types and fields. I create a new option set here. Let's say, for example, day of week. Option sets don't necessarily have to be related to the content that your users are going to generate, categories and statuses and things like that. They can also simply be sets to help create specific functionality in your application. If you're working with scheduling type of features, you may need to present the days of the week in many different places. And so rather than hard coding that into your designs over and over and over again, you can simply create a set that you can pull from every single time you want to display the days of the week, right? So I can create my choices over here: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so on. And now I can pull from that set in a much, much more dynamic way. I can leverage this as much as possible. You'll notice that our labeling of the option sets, we tend to put OS at the end of it. It helps us keep the sets differentiated from the data types. Because when you notice, when we go to create a new field and set up the field type, we have all of the option sets listed first, and I can easily identify them by looking at the OS suffix there, or you can put it at the beginning as a prefix, apart from the data types where we don't have those indicators. Okay, so that organization system is completely up to you. That's just what we like to do. Go with whatever makes the most sense for you and stay consistent with it. That's what's going to keep you super organized as your app starts to grow. Another little tip here for you that we've also started doing is adding emojis to the names of your data types, even your fields or your option sets. So for example, I'm on a PC, and if I hit the Windows period shortcut combination here, I can add emojis to the name, right? So for job posts, maybe I want to do like a document. of some kind, like this one here. Okay, so now I've added this emoji, and everywhere I see this data type name, Bubble will display that for me. And so that's another nice way to organize things, especially if you want to see your list of data types, maybe not in alphabetical order, which is the default here, but grouped by features that they, all belong to. So maybe I group conversation thread and message together by putting the same emoji in front of them. I could do, like an inbox type of thing here, right? I'm just going to copy this right here and do the same thing for my message data type. So now, since Bubble is technically sorting things alphabetically, if I put the same emoji at the front, then they're going to be grouped together, and that can help me organize. And that's a little pro tip. It just, makes things easier to find, especially if you have an application with many data types. I mean, we've seen applications with dozens of data types. And so if you don't have a good organization system, it can get very tedious to go through everything. I'm going to remove these for now, but thought I would share that with you so that you can see that. You can also do these on Mac computers as well. Okay, so back to the option set. A couple of other things to note here. When you're creating your options, you'll notice that you can change the order of them by moving them up and down, clicking, on these buttons here. The way that you've ordered them in this backend area is the order that they'll be displayed in the front end whenever you show them in your designs. You also have dynamic expressions that will allow you to resort them on top of this. So you do have more flexibility, so even if you want to sort this in one way here, but then in another way on a specific page, you will have that capability. You also have the ability to write notes here for each of these, either at the individual choice level or at the option set level. And of course, you can delete them and restore them if you made a mistake there. Now, keep in mind that you're creating your options down here in this field. Sometimes we'll see some of our clients will accidentally create their options using this button, create a new attribute. Now, an attribute is a completely different thing. An attribute is simply another property for the set. Okay, now think of the set kind of like a data type, right? Where you are creating fields. The display field is built in. Every single option set's going to come with the display field, and the value is exactly what you're writing in here. Okay, this is the built-in display field for the Monday option, for the Tuesday option. Now, I could create a new custom attribute to basically relate that choice to some other value that I might want to use in other areas of my design. Let's say, for example, an abbreviation of this day of week. And this is just going to be a text. Notice that I can, set this attribute type to anything in my entire data structure. Okay, so an abbreviation is a text. So now I have two attributes for this set. I have three options. And if I go to modify the attribute for the Monday option, you can see the attributes here, right? Display is the built-in, Monday is the label for that. And maybe my abbreviation is just MON. Okay, for Tuesday, it is TUE, right? I'm doing the abbreviation for these days of week. As you can see, these custom attributes are optional. You don't have to create them. In fact, I would say that in most cases with your option sets, you're not going to have custom attributes, but they can be very useful if you have a more involved option set that has various properties. Another attribute that's actually quite helpful for day of week is actually to associate a numerical value for that day of week. So let's say, let's just call this number, okay? And then this type would actually be a number. All right, so whenever you are working with date values in Bubble, you can extract the day of week for any given date, and Bubble will represent that extraction with a number. And it goes from 0 to 6. So Sunday is 0. Let's put Sunday in here, and I'll put it at the top just so that we can see it in order. Sunday is 0, so I would give this number 0. Let's give it an abbreviation as well. Monday is 1. Okay, Tuesday is 2, and Wednesday is 3. And it goes all the way to Saturday, which is number 6, from 0 to 6, not from 1 to 7. So that's also very helpful when you are working with more involved scheduling logic, booking logic, if you are trying to compare availability based on days of week. Going off of the number is going to be the most reliable system for you because it's, you can do math with it and do a lot of filtering and you have a lot of flexibility with that. Okay, so this is an example of an option set with multiple custom attributes. If you're ready to create your application's data structure, I actually encourage you to organize things in a spreadsheet like this first. This is a great way to create essentially a scratch pad of your data types, of your fields, to see what example entries would look like with those values and wrap your head around what kind of relationships you need. It's more efficient. You can do things a lot faster here by moving things around before you really commit things to your editor. Now, it is completely okay if you don't have a clear picture of what all of your data types and fields and option set needs are going to be right from the beginning. That's very normal. Your database will absolutely evolve over time. You can't anticipate everything. There are going to be features and just requirements, from your database that you'll find as you go. And you can always come back in here and make adjustments. Okay, you can add new data types, you can add new fields, you can replace things, you can change the way things are related to each other. But it is going to be in your best interest to organize as much as you can at the start, so you have a solid baseline to start working with, because from there you can create some test records, and then you can start actually running workflows and working with that data structure and previewing everything and confirming that things are working properly. Okay, so I do encourage you to address your database early on before you start building out any functionality or front-end designs. It's going to work in your favor. It will save you a lot of time. All right, in the next video, we are going to go over managing your entries, right? So we've set up the structure. Now, how do we work with the actual entries in our application? That's going to be handled in this App Data tab. This is where we see our actual records. Okay, I intentionally didn't go to this tab during this video because I wanted you to focus more on the architecture of your tables. Okay, so in the next video, we're going to look at how do we work with the entries, how do we filter things, how do we find things, how do we edit, create, all of that. We'll see you in that video next.